We're in Silicon Valley, right?
There's just nowhere else like it.
People who have ideas, who want to start businesses, who want to solve problems.
Athens, you know, the modern day Athens.
The top of the game in any company, whether it's high tech or anything, has to do with can you think? And back to can you collaborate? Can you communicate?
You can have all the bright ideas in the world, but if you don't know how to let other people know and how to share that, then you're not going to get anywhere.
How do we think? It's an interesting question.
Not only is it important to know something, but knowing what to do with that knowledge is even more critical.
What does a child need to know?
Interpersonal skills, socialization, teamwork.
I want to see the creativity. I want to see the problem solving. I want to see that there's more than just, you know, I've got the degree, I went to the good school.
A lot of people prepare their kids for what's hyped, right? In terms of, you know, getting a job and making a certain amount of money.
And what really counts is resilience, you know, creativity, adaptability.
It's the capacity to learn. It's the capacity to do. Whether it's in science or math or out in the world or art, it's the capacity to be able to do and think.
And when they see that they have that capacity to do it, what isn't possible isn't stuck in their heads anymore.
And we have to differentiate between building skills and building capacities. Waldorf education builds capacities.
The basic developmental needs of kids have not changed for years. They need a caring adult. They need to physiologically take care of their bodies. They need to be mentally healthy. They need sleep, you know, basics. What we're finding is that the focus has been much more on fast-paced, competitive achievement and pushing them in a way that's been really negative.
The pace has become so fast. And then we say, okay, at age 4 they should be able to do this. Yes, they could do it if you push them, but what's missing? What are they not doing?
I think there is an excessive emphasis on the importance of getting the best grades. You know, I think that success in life is a function of so many other things.
People are beginning to really look to say, well, so how do you learn?
The Waldorf philosophy is to start a little bit later. I mean, you don't start kindergartners with reading. Kindergartners should be playing.
The developmental needs of the young child are particularly met in unstructured, free play, creative play. It engages their visual senses, their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills. It develops their language skills, their social interaction with their classmates.
No, what are you doing eating, meeting, writing about for?
It reminded me of what childhood used to be, what I remember childhood being, and the freedom to be a child and to think like a child.
I wasn't pressured from kindergarten, first grade on to be committing to 3 hours of homework a day when I came home, and instead I could be a child when I was growing up.
Who has been stung by a wasp?
Well, when I got stung, it just felt like a flash of pain.
It just feels like a pencil.
So we call them paper wasps because they make
paper.
The teacher is the key. The teacher has to understand the children's development and be able to ask, who are these children in this place and time?
Ready to be Demeter again?
When you look at a child, there's your curriculum.
We recognize that every grade at each age, there's a different capacity. There's a different developmental stage.
It's like when a toddler all of a sudden can walk and they just get up and they go, and some do it at 10 months and some do it at, 20 months.
By the time it comes back to your heart, it's oxygen pour blood back into your right atrium.
There's a lot of reason behind what we teach and when we teach it. How does this meet the child at 7 years old, 8 years old, 9 years old, 15, 16, 17 years old?
The queen carouses to thy fortune, Hamlet.
Oh, wait a hand!
Hamlet!
Someone really thought about what they're teaching the kids. It's not randomly teaching about Rome in 6th grade. There's a reason for that.
The skin is the biggest organ you have on your body and in your body.
9 pounds of dead skin cells
fall off your body each year. And if you're in a room and there's dust like on the windowsill, 90% of that is probably dead skin cells.
Take what's in the child, what's naturally growing there, and then draw it out in the way that it can just really flourish.
I think for me, the most challenging thing, and I think actually one of the most fundamental things about Waldorf education, is to get out of the intellect and into the imagination.
Imagination is developed early, and you can also develop it out of kids early.
Wait, said the frog.
Think about what children like to do. They like to hear stories. They like to draw pictures. They like to sing songs.
9 times 12 is 108.
Waldorf, when we bring phenomena to young children, we bring it in a very rich story way.
Through the great myths and fairy tales and legends and biographies to science and nature, so that the child begins to feel, what a place the world is. I'm so happy to know all about it.
You walk down the hallways and the place is just rocking with movement and clapping and times tables and singing and recorders and skipping and all of these different things to literally tune up the body and say, get ready.
6 divided by 3 is 2, plus 22 is 24, minus 6 is 18, plus 8 is 26, not 16.
Ooh, that happens, okay. They do all kinds of exercises that help integrate the brain, both sides, front, back.
And crossing these midlines is strengthening that corpus callosum.
We think about our minds, our brains, telling our hands what to do, and sometimes that is, of course, the case. But our hands inform our minds, our brains. It's a two-way street.
It's a rich, complex tapestry of multisensory learning.
Okay, write your first line.
The moving into the high school is developing the thinking.
4 years of math, 4 years of science, 4 years of history.
Expectations are high.
4 years of English, 4 years of language, right? 4 years of art.
We were there all day, every day, doing the most rigorous academic arts, science, history, everything.
They do very sophisticated academic work.
So we're going to start with the E. coli cells, then we're going to add the DNA.
A lot of people have this idea that Waldorf's not very strong in the math and sciences.
That's just a superstition.
I think what they're seeing is not that it's not strong in the math and sciences, but they're seeing a different style of teaching.
And if you spend a little time in one of those classes, you can see it.
We add the calcium chloride. Now we want to collect the cell colonies and see if you can see cell colonies in your plates. Kind of swirl it a little bit.
It doesn't only teach them science. It also teaches them about the world. It teaches them about knowing themselves better.
As we're adding this DNA, think about how this is very similar to helping someone with diabetes. People with diabetes need insulin. Cells are now genetically engineered to produce that protein. That's exactly what we're doing here.
To know the world is to know the self, and to know the self is to know the world. So that's what we're doing in the biological sciences. But what's so exciting is when I speak with my colleagues in music, in art, they're all doing this as well. In mathematics, we're all working with this concept. So there's a wholeness as well. So the students are really held in this learning process, which is really very powerful.
This is 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's do A to B prime.
Yeah.
And then...
No, but you have to connect A to B prime prime.
And then you need to make it a third, a B prime prime prime, and connect from there to that one.
No, but you still have to connect to the
second. We go from imitation in the kindergarten to imagination in the lower grades to the intellect in the high school, coming to a new level of intellectual ability, but still they do the arts. And all the arts are woven into their main lessons in physics and in chemistry. And they do biographies, and they're always considering the really important questions of humankind. and the important questions for themselves. Who am I? What am I doing here? How do I fit in this world? What am I supposed to do with the things that I'm given?
You can think about drawing something out on a piece of paper, painting something, sculpting something. And when you can really vision what you want your essay, what you want your math equation to look like, it helps you really actually comprehend, I think, the material much better.
I'm in a meeting and I almost always, if somebody doesn't get what I'm talking about, the first thing I always do is I go for a marker and I walk straight up to the whiteboard and start drawing arrows and this and that and the relationship, and everybody, oh, okay, that makes sense.
I apply art, I apply beauty and elegance and simplicity and an appealing way of doing things to everything that I do.
1, 2, 3, water!
We bring sports at a certain age according to what they're developmentally ready for. So in about grade 5 or 6, we encourage soccer and other competitive sports.
There is value in sports, no question.
The camaraderie is incredible, and my son, who has never played basketball before, is blossoming.
I play sports. I play volleyball, tennis, soccer. Unfortunately not basketball, which people say is weird because I'm tall, but...
These kids start out with classes like eurythmy, they unicycle, they do balancing, they do climbing, all types of physical activities that increase their coordination and movement.
I was able to go through the high school and do 22 hours a week of competitive gymnastics at the same time.
And I, kind of ultimately coming out, was able to walk onto the hockey team at Dartmouth.
They have exposure, all sorts of exposures through Waldorf, so that they can kind of get a taste for different flavors of things to see what really may pique their interest.
It's the doing, the tasting, the creating, the making of the experiment from scratch. It's not getting some pre-boxed thing.
Right now they are threshing and winnowing the seeds so that we can replant in the winter and in the spring.
It's kind of a practical understanding of a different way of doing things that I think has been lost by mainstream education.
That approach to the world, engagement with the world, aliveness in learning is what Waldorf teachers work really, really hard to protect and keep at the center of what we're doing.
You want to know a secret? Some of the tech world's biggest gurus are actually sending their own children to schools without a single computer. They're called Waldorf schools, and they are unplugged on purpose.
Students use actual paper and pencils.
Technology gets introduced. It's just something to experience later when it's not gonna hypnotize you.
You need to interact with it, and you need to be good at it to be competitive in today's job market. And I think that Waldorf understands that.
They're wonderful techniques and tools, and we all use them, and we're grateful for them. We can't imagine not having them anymore. But when they're at school, what should they be doing?
If you look at the things that the Silicon Valley CEOs are saying that they really want to see.
Creativity, communication, and collaboration.
Interpersonal skills, socialization, teamwork.
A curiosity and a persistence and a drive.
Something that needs to make you keep going when you're sitting in the lab and you just, nobody's telling you what to do.
It sounds as if you can tell a kid, if you're only good at that, 30 years from now, you'll have a great job and you'll be sought after. We don't know. The safety net is your own qualities, your own resilience.
We can look around the world today and see a lot of 40-year-olds who don't know what they're doing because they were prepared for one thing and the world has changed. The big picture is the key here, because we live in a time where we don't know what the world is going to be like in 10 years. And they have to be able to think their way through it in a whole systems way.
I feel like my kids are having a style of education that teaches them about adaptability, and it teaches them how to learn, and teaches them how to attack a problem and think about it and look at it from all different angles and solve it.
And, ultimately at the end of the day, as you kind of move forward in life, those are the things that are going to set you apart.
If you have to picture your child in, let's say,
20 years. What would you wish for your child?
For my kids, I want them to be men, but what is it to be a man?
I don't have an interest to raise insecure overachievers.
Every day, my children come home and I see their eyes excited, I see their smiles, they're happy.
One mother said, "I have my daughter back now."
I'm not sure if it's all Waldorf schools or just this school, but the students are allowed to grow as people. It's not like you're parts of a machine and you're just stamping out students.
They're not just concerned about preparing them for college, a college career, but they're also more concerned about preparing them for life.
If I had to simplify Waldorf, it would probably be that they teach you how to learn. If you carry that with you, then they've given you the fundamental building block of your life.
In the long run, you want a healthy, happy 35-year-old, and no one's going to remember what your fourth grader gets in math.
The older I get, the more I realize how difficult life can be sometimes. And if you're well adjusted, you're able to deal with the hurdles, and both the good and the bad.
Rudolf Steiner said, our task in Waldorf education is to prepare the children for the next stage of their life. That's our job.
And so they become a truly actualized adult that can do what they're meant to do in the world.